Okay, now we're going to solve every single river and ford on planet Earth. We're continuing to solve everything in the universe for Jesus equals 8 at 8, for the glory of God, and the redemption of idiotic mankind that is completely uncertain as to what he's supposed to be doing down here. And he has no clue what's going on and why he exists. So we are doing something of eternal value here for the glory of God. Thank God. There is something that lasts forever. It's called the Word of God. And all of history lasts forever. The truth of history lasts forever. But we are taking all of it for the mathematical glory of Jesus, which is why this is so epic and so expensive. Okay? So we are spending the day in Hebrew today. The root of all languages, the kingpin of all languages, the eternal language, Hebrew. So I don't think there's something more important in all of world history than the concept of the river. It's basically the foundation of every single settlement from the dawn of time. Rivers, rivers, rivers. Rivers, rivers, rivers. They've been associated with life from the dawn of civilization. So we are solving all rivers for Jesus equals 8. Here's the word river in Hebrew. And then there's the word ford, okay, to cross over a river. And so here's the word river. 8 equals 88 exactly. And it's got an 8 at dead center, which is the most important letter. And then it's flanked by 1530 to make 8 plus 8. 80 plus 8, 88. So Jesus takes the glory for every single river on planet Earth. And he also takes the glory for every single ford. This is the noun, ford, divides by 8, 12, and 24 perfectly. And then here's the root, which means to cross over. So you have to cross over a river. The ford is the place where you typically cross over. That's the noun. Well, here's the action of you actually crossing over. So, again, you can combine these. If you have a ford on a river, now you're up to 400 perfectly. Genius. If you cross over a river, this includes all bridges. Now you have 360, which divides by 8 perfectly. Okay? So there you go. And just genius. Just genius. And then you can take the difference between a ford and a river to get multiples of 8, because they both divide by 8 individually. And that speaks to the fact that the ford is the shallowest part of the river. So if you subtract, the river from the ford. Just genius. And so every single river and ford, in fact, the word Oxford University, the most famous university, I would say, one of the most famous universities in the world, comes from the word ford. As in, it's from the town of Oxford was a ford where oxen crossed the river. So, well, we just solved the word ford in the mind of God for Jesus equals 8 at 8, and so Jesus takes the glory for Oxford University, because that's what it's based on. You essentially go to the root of everything that you can think of in all world history. Go to the deepest level of anything that you can possibly think of in all world history, and you will find Jesus equals 8 at 8 taking the glory for it. And so Jesus, of course, takes the glory for every single city and town that has ever been established in the history of civilization, because nearly all of them began on rivers, and in particular in the shallow parts of the rivers, the ford, which is where they crossed over. And so when you look at all these towns in Europe that have the name Ford in them, there's a whole bunch of them. Oxford, Stratford, Frankfurt. Furt is the German word for ford. Schweinfurt, Klagenfurt, Vilvoorde. Okay, Woerd is the Dutch word for ford. Coevorden, Zandvoort, Maastricht. And then this is now the Latin word for crossing, Dordrecht. So all of these towns in Europe that are named after the ford, the place in the river where the settlement began. Okay, and of course that word Oxford is everywhere in university, in publications and books all over the world. So by solving this word ford in the deepest of all languages, Hebrew, the eternal language, here it is, folks. Here's the one-shot deal. God only has one chance to make this thing glorify himself. What has he chosen to do? Well, you can look at the 2 center letters, make 72 perfectly. That's a triple of triple eights. And then the 2 outer letters are 240, which is a triple of 8s multiplied by 10. So in every way, God has planted the maximum mathematical glory that he possibly could for Jesus into this word ford. so that he essentially and perfectly and completely takes the glory for every single village and town in the history of civilization. I mean, you can... There's a respectable, one of the only respectable, in my opinion, video games out there is this game called Civilization, where you can play through much of world history and develop settlements and build towns and such like that. And it quite well highlights the blessing of the river in all of this settlement. When you play this simulation of world history, it's a simulation game of world history, very high level, of course. You can, the river is just a blessing. All the towns, if you build a town on a river, it prospers faster. Your units can move faster along the rivers. The food increase, everything that happens along the river is a bonus because it's just that much faster, and it's just where all the life ultimately comes from. So, the river. We just solved all rivers and fords. They were always the key points in every civilization and settlement. In historic times, the ford was the key defense post, and many famous battles were fought at or near fords. This is straight off of Wikipedia. You can read just how many battles in world history occurred on fords. And the whole point of this, folks, is for you to just understand how big Jesus is in all of world history and how small you are. And how small your little friends are, and how small your little associates are, and how small all the secular companies are, and how small every single tiny man on this earth is compared to Jesus. Jesus was alive and reigning over all of these events, and he takes the glory for every single, so all these things that happen at fords. They are very much the apex of a lot of events in world history. And of course, you've got your Ford truck, that loves to ford through river waters. I mean, driving through those fords of water. So any way you slice it, Jesus takes the glory for everything in history. That's the whole point, is saying, are you starting to understand what God is doing? You need to understand what this universe is and what is going on. You need to just understand what is actually going on in this world. Why are you here? What is God doing? What is he up to? What is all this stuff going on? Why is everything the way that it is? What is all this stuff? Why are there rivers? Why are there fords? Who is this all for? What is the purpose of my life? No one could possibly ask any more important questions at a young age. Okay? Well, it's all for the glory of Jesus. Everything in this entire story of history is for the glory of Jesus mathematically. The word ford, the word river. The word river itself in English is 72, a triple of triple eights. God uses all languages to glorify himself mathematically. Even the word crossing divides by 8 perfectly. And cross equals Jesus, equals gospel, equals preacher in English, equals Messiah. So in every way, in every detail, this entire story is for the glory of Jesus. It has nothing to do with you, puny man. It has nothing to do with your little life. It has nothing to do with your little desires. It has everything to do with Jesus Christ. And billions of angels that are watching this whole thing. Okay? Oh my goodness. That's why the worst thing that you can do, the absolute worst thing you can do in this life is live for yourself and live for your own quote-unquote happiness. Is trying and pursuing your own happiness this whole life long, because you will get to the end of your life and you will look back and say, I have done nothing that lasts forever. I have done nothing. My life was meaningless. I get to the end of my life, I had some fun, I had some laughs, I kind of enjoyed myself, but there's nothing I've done lasts forever. Nothing goes on. That's because you weren't doing anything for the glory of Jesus. Because Jesus is the only one that lasts forever. Jesus' glory lasts forever. Everything else fades away. Everything else passes. The Word of God lasts forever. Souls last forever. Labor for the truth and the glory of God. Otherwise, you're a fool. A total fool's fool. Okay. So there you go. We just solved all rivers and all fords for Jesus equals 8 at 8. Including every single town that has ever been based on a river or a ford. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. All rivers and fords solved.